Good evening. I will not make any introductory remarks or statements. If you have any questions, I will be happy to try to answer them. You are welcome. Alexander Savinix, Mr. President, good evening. Anastasia Savinix, TASS News Agency. You have been working here in Dushanbe for 3 days now, and probably devoted half of that time to the program of your state visit to Tajikistan. We spent many hours in one-on-one negotiations with your colleague Rahman, and as part of a delegation that clearly demonstrates the mutual interest of the two countries. Could you sum up some results of this state visit and identify which areas are developing most actively and vividly now, and what are the prospects? And if I may, a small sub-question in the development of this topic, we have signed a program with Tajikistan on the development of labor migration. The Ministry of Internal Affairs is opening representative offices in both Russia and Tajikistan. In your opinion, does this help to streamline migration flows? Does this help minimize the flow of illegal migration and crime? And are there plans to sign similar programs with other countries in the region? Thank you.
I'll start with the bilateral relations. Tajikistan is an important partner for us, and it is also important in Central Asia. Its importance lies in the fact that it is located on the borders of the CIS, it is the southern underbelly of the CIS, and despite the fact that we do not have common borders, it is nevertheless extremely important for the security of the Russian Federation. It is no coincidence that our border guards are still on duty here, and our border guard service is present here, in close contact with colleagues, and our military base is located. And of course, we have paid considerable attention to this, considering all these issues. Yes, we see that the current government in Afghanistan is doing everything to normalize the situation in that country, but nevertheless, there are still quite a lot of problems there, and the Afghan leadership itself recognizes this. So here on the borders between Tajikistan and Afghanistan, everything must be secure. This is the first one. Second, we have a lot of serious economic activity. It is enough just to mention our cooperation in the field of energy, including in hydropower. Tajikistan is one of the most powerful clusters of this type of activity, with mountain rivers here. Everything is well known. All our projects are well known. Those that have already been implemented and those that can be implemented or in the development of what has been done. There are other areas, including those related to the extraction of mineral raw materials.
All of this is of great interest to our economy, mutual, to the Russian and Tajik economies. As we can see, joint ventures are being opened and investments are continuing for Russian businesses. I'm also referring to the competitive advantages of Tajikistan, related, say, to the cultivation of the same cotton and so on. It matters to us. And of course, humanitarian cooperation is a very important area of activity. Russian is very important because the president of Tajikistan took the initiative to open schools where not only the Russian language is taught, but where all teaching is actually in Russian, very close to our programs. A large number of our teachers work here, and we will certainly increase the working conditions for the branches of Russian universities that have launched their activities here, and we will support the desire of young people from Tajikistan to study at universities in the Russian Federation. One of the largest quotas, if not the largest, for the CIS countries is intended for Tajikistan.
Russian is already well known to everyone, but I will say it again. In Tajikistan, the study of the Russian language and Russian culture is given special importance. This also refers to theatrical activities, but the most important thing is that the status of the Russian language is enshrined in law. And this is very important. It is the basis for the further development of our interstate relations. As for migration, of course, we understand what is happening in the republics of Central Asia with demographics. Just a few years ago, there were a little over 5 million people here, and now there are more than 10. There is a very rapid demographic development here, and Russia is interested, of course, in the workforce. But at the same time, we are interested in ensuring that it is the right workforce for us, first, and second, that people themselves live there in human conditions, exist, and that they comply with our laws and regulations, as I always say, and are law-abiding citizens. By the way, this is primarily related to language. Nevertheless, there are many problems here, and the citizens of the Russian Federation point out these problems to us. And first of all, we must think about the citizens of our country. In this regard, of course, it is very important that representatives of the relevant departments, in this case the Ministries of Internal Affairs, work both ours in Tajikistan and our Tajik colleagues in Russia. It is very important. Why? Because then they are already legitimate representatives of the Tajik authorities. Firstly, they see for themselves what is happening, and secondly, they participate in making appropriate administrative decisions together with their Russian colleagues. And the same Tajik citizens who find themselves on the territory of the Russian Federation perceive this in a completely different way. It's one thing when the police require them to comply with certain rules and laws, but it's another matter when Tajik law enforcement officials themselves get involved. This increases the level of trust on both sides and the efficiency of the work. Hello, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Kira Latukina, Rossiyskaya Gazeta. 2 major international summits were held, the CIS summit and yesterday the Russia Central Asia summit. How do you assess their success, and how much is a format like the Russia Central Asia summit needed, in demand, and what additional benefits does it provide? Once upon a time, when the Soviet Union was being dissolved, the creation of the CIS was announced. I think that the vast majority of citizens of our countries did not really understand what was happening. Well, there was the USSR. Now it has become the CIS. We thought that, in essence, little would change. In fact, everything has changed dramatically. Unfortunately, the citizens of our countries were not very informed about this at the time. But we live in the conditions that have historically developed, and we must live not only in these conditions, but also look at how we can equip this space, how we can move on and not lose the competitive advantages that have arisen as a result of the creation of a single logistics system, a single industrial cooperation, and a single cultural code in the former USSR, despite the diversity of cultures of the peoples of the Soviet Union. The CIS is called upon to preserve all this. It became clear at some stage that the level of cooperation within the CIS was not sufficient to solve the current complex economic problems. And therefore, on the initiative of Kazakhstan, on the initiative of Nursultan Nazarbayev, another association arose, the EURASEC, where work is underway within the framework of deeper cooperation between countries that have considered it possible, expedient, and useful for themselves to create such an association. But the CIS does not lose its importance, and its purpose is to maintain this common space, including not least the humanitarian one. No matter how big the differences in the culture of the most diverse peoples of the former Soviet Union were, there was still some kind of unified moral code of the Soviet people. And this also has a certain meaning. And preserving all that was inherited from the Soviet Union is the task that the CIS is called upon to solve. And it solves the problem successfully. Contacts between people remain quite close. I repeat once again, we strive to preserve a single transport space. It is very important.
We also support Russian as the language of international communication, which is also one of the fundamental issues of combining our efforts and preserving these competitive advantages, which I mentioned at the very beginning.
Finally, this also applies to addressing security issues related to combating the most dangerous types of crime, such as drug trafficking, and so on. If you look at the set of documents that were adopted today, which we signed, this set is exactly what it says. Nevertheless, it is the preservation and strengthening of our unity. This is very important for our future. As for the Central Asian countries, it's about the same here, but there are more specifics here. We must admit that peoples of different ethnic groups live here, and the further we go, the more development takes place on its own basis, on an economic basis, on its own cultural code, on its own traditions. Russia is developing in the same way, and it is very important not to travel very far from each other. It is very important to maintain the feeling that something, not something, but a lot unites us. And that's the way it really is.
Isn't there enough excess labor in other countries? Oh, come on. But they come to us from the republics of the former Soviet Union. Why? Because after all, there is something that unites us. Why do they want to learn Russian? Yes, that's why. And in this regard, of course, we need to look for all the points of contact that are common and that we all cherish. Our common history is a very important thing. Today we have talked about this, and we will talk about it all the time. The common victory over Nazism is our common heritage and the pride of all our peoples. That is, there are some things that united us in the past and now bind us, but we always need to look for and constantly look for things that will unite us in the future. This format was created to pay special attention to this particular area of our foreign policy.
Yunashev. Hello, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Alexander Yunashev, Life. Yesterday, you met with Ilham Aliyev. During these negotiations, did you manage to outline ways out of the crisis in bilateral relations, or did you still feel a chill? Thank you. Vladimir Putin. You know, I wouldn't even say that we had some kind of crisis in interstate relations. Why? If this were a crisis of interstate relations, then we would not have an increase in trade and economic ties. And despite everything we have seen and faced, he has continued to grow, and grow significantly. What kind of crisis is this in interstate relations? I would say that it was most likely an emotional crisis. And it's clear why, because we are faced with a very difficult event, a tragic event. The death of the plane and its passengers. Therefore, we had to calmly figure it out. We needed time to figure it out. It was necessary to carry out very complex technical examinations, it is true. We had to find these boxes, the so-called black boxes, decrypt them, compare them with all the data that the investigation received from the Ministry of Defense, verify this information, take all the information that we collected from the dispatching services and from our dispatching service and from the Kazakh dispatching service. Put it all together, calculate it. It requires a lot of hard, very responsible and professional work. When I was a student at the law faculty of Leningrad University, I did my internship at the Transport Prosecutor's Office, including being assigned to the investigator who handled such cases. I know what it is, you know. This is a very painstaking, boring job at first glance, in which mistakes should not be made. But in the end, we did it. We agreed with Ilham Haydarovich that we would do everything to ensure that this investigation was conducted objectively, including the IAC, an international organization, conducted an investigation using all the materials provided to this organization.
The investigation is now being completed, and everything is generally clear. There are some other details, maybe subtleties, that specialists should arrange accordingly. We discussed this with the president of Azerbaijan yesterday. I really hope that we have turned this page, that we will move on and develop our contacts without any complications, and implement the really big plans that both countries have in logistics, industrial cooperation, and, by the way, in the humanitarian field too. Let me remind you in this regard that Azerbaijan is also practically a Russian-speaking country, where Russian is studied almost everywhere. This also shows that the country's commitment to developing relations with Russia is fundamental and enduring. I really hope that this will be the case in the future. Emotions, you can't do without them, but still, it's better to always keep them in such a state so that they don't interfere with work and don't interfere with moving forward. I hope that's all in the past. Please, I beg you. Thank you. Elena Shuryaeva, Mir TV channel. Returning to the topic of the summit, today at the meeting we agreed to create a new format, CIS+. Is there an understanding of which of the international partners is ready to join the organization in this format? On what terms? And most importantly, what will it give to the residents of our countries? Thank you for this question. This is an important decision because it no longer makes the organization a family gathering, but gives it the status of a truly international organization. There are many willing states that would like to participate in our work, that are interested in working together, in finding common interests and ways to achieve them, and in solving common tasks. We have agreed to create such a format as the CIS+, plus we have agreed to make representatives of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization observers. It seems to me that these are very good decisions. They are timely, and, of course, they will increase both the capabilities of the CIS and the status of the organization itself. I just have no doubt that we will feel it. Thank you very much. You are welcome. Good afternoon. Andrei Kolesnikov, Kommersant newspaper. Before your trip to Dushanbe, one of the Russian deputy foreign ministers said that Anchorage's potential was exhausted. Do you agree with this statement? Is that all now? And one more question, if I may. It has just become known that Donald Trump did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize. What do you think? Should I have, deserved, had the right? Thank you. As for the first part of the question, what would you like to hear, roughly? I can say yes. I would like to hear that I am not exhausted, after all. Do you understand what's going on? We didn't fully reveal what was discussed in Anchorage. We were just saying that, on the whole, we have an understanding on the part of both the United States and the Russian Federation about where we should move and what we should strive for in order to end this conflict and by peaceful means. And these are difficult questions. Donald and I agreed that I would need to think about it in Moscow and talk with our colleagues and allies about this issue too. And he told me the same thing. These are complex issues that require additional study, but we remain on the basis of the discussion that took place in Anchorage. We are not changing anything for ourselves here. We believe that something else needs to be finalized on both sides. But in general, we remain within the framework of the Alaska agreements.
Yes, about Trump. It's not for me to decide who gets the Nobel Prize. First of all, it seems to me that hardly any of you and your viewers and listeners here will object. I don't think so. I'll tell you what I mean now. There have been cases when the committee awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to people who have done nothing for peace. And in my opinion, with these decisions, they have caused enormous damage to the credibility of this award. Well, a man came, a good one, a bad one, and in a month, in two, boom. For what? I didn't do anything at all. Is that how they work? It's for some kind of merit. And therefore, it seems to me, the authority has been largely lost. God be with him. It's not for me to judge. Whether the current president of the United States is worthy or not worthy of the Nobel Prize, I do not know. But he is really doing a lot to resolve complex crises that have been going on for years or even decades. And I've already said it for sure. I know that, with regard to the crisis in Ukraine, he sincerely strives for this. Something has succeeded, something has failed. We may still be able to do a lot based on the agreements and discussions in Anchorage, but he is certainly trying, definitely working on these issues of achieving peace and resolving complex international situations. The most striking example is the situation in the Middle East. If we succeed in completing everything that Donald aspired to, everything he talked about, and what he is trying to do, this is a historic event. This is just a historic event. And if you noticed, yesterday I spoke with the Prime Minister of Iraq, Mohammed Soudani. He is now the head of the Arab League. We agreed with him that we would even postpone our meeting, Russia and the Arab League. It was my initiative. I did this precisely because I don't want to interfere with the process, which we hope has now improved and is underway. By the way, on Trump's initiative and with his direct participation in the Middle East. Isn't that an achievement? This is an achievement. But, I repeat, it is not for me to decide whether he is worthy of this award or not, and whether this award is worthy of achievements of this kind.
Can we clarify the gospel? Yes, please. Mr. President, hello. Sargon Kadaya, Russia Today. You said that you will continue to cooperate with your Arab colleagues on the issue of Gaza. Can I find out in what format? And will Russia participate in the various working groups that will be established on monitoring humanitarian issues, everything related to the settlement and recognition of the Palestinian state?
We have a very high level of trust with our Arab friends and with Palestine. From the very beginning, when I spoke at the Valdai Club, I said that we support the initiatives of the United States, President Trump, in this area, on this track, but one of the key issues is the creation of a Palestinian state. And of course, this is a question of the future. As far as I understand, I haven't read all the proposals so carefully yet. There's also an issue related to the transfer of power in the enclave to the Palestinian Authority after some time, its formation. There are issues related to security, the creation of a local militia.
Bearing in mind the level of trust that exists between Russia and our Arab, including, above all, Palestinian friends, of course, I believe our participation could be in demand. If our friends feel that this is the case, of course, we will always be ready to participate. And we have been involved in this for decades. I think that Russia has something to say and something to offer here to resolve those issues that will arise, one way or another, during the implementation of the agreements reached. You are welcome. Good evening, Zarubin Rosia TV channel. Happy birthday to you, past. Thank you. Of course, we were all wondering where you were that day, because usually no one ever sees how you spend your birthday. And in the evening, we saw that you and the military were in the Peter and Paul Cathedral, in the tomb of the Russian emperors since Peter I. Why is it there?
Why would the military? I think it's clear why the military is involved, because the fate of Russia, to a large extent, is always exclusively in the hands of the Russian people. But now our military is in the foreground, at the front, in the literal and figurative sense of the word. They solve crucial tasks for our country, both the guys at the front, directly on the front line, and, of course, the commanders. As you have noticed, I have met with the commanders of all our groups fighting on the line of contact. And, of course, I invited them to Peter and Paul Cathedral, the cathedral of the Peter and Paul Fortress, and specifically to the tomb of our sovereigns, czars. And indeed, first of all, we laid flowers at the tomb of Peter I.
Why? I think that's understandable, too, because it was Peter the Great who laid the basic fundamental foundations of the modern Russian state, whatever it is called, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, but it was Peter I who laid the basic fundamental foundations. And our military as a whole, both the commanders and our fighters, officers on the ground, in fact protect what Peter I created in his time, and then his followers strengthened him. At different times, the fate of Russia developed in different ways. It became bigger and smaller. Under Catherine II, her grave is right there, next to Peter I, actually Russia made the greatest territorial acquisitions, as is known. In other words, we paid tribute to those people who made a unique, fundamental contribution to the formation of our state.
And then we just had a meeting with our military colleagues. They reported to me about the situation on each sector of the front, each for which they are specifically responsible. And after that, we had lunch with them. In fact, we continued the same conversation, but in an informal setting. Pavel Zarubin, but it's customary to bring gifts to a birthday party. Did they give you a gift? We did it. We did it. There are various military plots, figurines, books, but perhaps two of them have a special value. One of the commanders handed me 2 icons that our soldiers were wearing, and these icons saved them. They had bullet dents on them, and they gave me these icons as a gift. I am very grateful to them. I will definitely find them and talk to them. Even now, taking this opportunity, as they say in such cases, I would like to convey my most sincere words of gratitude to them through the media. And may the Lord keep them as He has kept them until now. What? What? What kind of tomahawks?
Ivashchenko, Stanislav Ivashchenko, Zvezda TV channel. In Kyiv, Zelensky threatens to hit Russia with tomahawks, almost at the Kremlin. And they even say that this is some kind of a form of pontificating, blackmailing Russia. Vladimir Putin, you didn't misspoke, and neither did the pontificating. Show-off is present here. Sergei Ivashchenko. And there is a question in this regard. The Americans say that whether they will hand over the tomahawks or not depends on Russia's negotiating position on Ukraine. And if they are not satisfied with our negotiating position, they will hand it over. Is our response ready? Vladimir Putin. Our response is to strengthen the air defense system of the Russian Federation.
Kukoveshnikov Konstantin. Good afternoon. Kukoveshnikov Konstantin. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. As is already known, you have made a proposal to extend the Treaty on the Limitation of Strategic Offensive Arms, which expires very soon, in February 2026. And judging by the first statements that came out of Washington, Trump doesn't seem to mind. Are there any signals through closed channels that Washington is really ready to conduct such consultations? Will 4 months be enough to do it all? And do I understand correctly that you will need a new face-to-face meeting with your American counterpart? Thank you. Vladimir Putin. We have contacts through the Foreign Ministry and the State Department. Will these few months be enough to make a decision on the extension? I think that this will be enough if there is a goodwill to extend these agreements. And if the American side thinks they don't need it, It's not critical for us at all. Everything is going according to plan in this regard. I have already said this, and it is no secret. The novelty of our nuclear deterrent is higher than that of any other nuclear state, and we are actively developing all this. What I said in the old days, in the old years, it's all evolving. We are bringing it up to date. And I think we will have the opportunity to announce in the near future the new weapons that we once announced. It appears, passes our tests, and they are successful.
As for the intercontinental component at sea and in the air, I repeat, novelty and modernity, as the military say, are very high in our country, and we support it. We are ready to negotiate if it is acceptable and useful for the Americans, for the American side. If not, then no. It would be a pity, because then there would be nothing left in terms of deterrence in the field of strategic offensive weapons. You are welcome.
Hello, my name is Anna Siddiq, Interfax News Agency. My question is in continuation of the topic of the Nobel Prize. Zelensky stated that he would support Trump's candidacy if he supplied tomahawks to Ukraine. That is, peace is obtained in exchange for weapons. How would you rate such a business-like approach, in quotation marks?
I think that the Nobel Committee was hardly interested in the opinion of the head of the current Kiev regime when making the decision. First. Second, linking the Nobel Peace Prize with arms supplies is ridiculous and simply speaks to the level of the current Kiev regime as a whole. Thank you very much. What else? Olga Matveyeva, radio stations Mayak and Vesti FM. At Valdai, you said that one of the countries is preparing to test nuclear weapons. Please tell me, is this country the USA? If, as you said, Russia gives a symmetrical response and also tests nuclear weapons, won't this throw our countries and all of humanity back to the 90s, when the whole world refused to test nuclear weapons? And won't this provoke a new nuclear race between Moscow and Washington? Thank you. Vladimir Putin. I think that actually, to be honest, there is a certain race going on. Whether he will discard it or not is difficult to say. But I did not say that the United States is preparing. I said that in some countries they are preparing for the test. But this is also well known to experts, because there is always a temptation to test the effectiveness of the military fuel that has been stored in missiles for many, many years. All this is played on computers. Experts believe that this is enough, but some of these experts believe that it would be necessary to conduct field tests, and in some countries they are thinking about it. As far as we know, they are even preparing for it. So I said that if they do, then we will do the same. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? From the point of view of ensuring security, this is good. From the point of view of the overall picture related to deterrence, with actions aimed at curbing, if not reducing, the arms race, this is probably not a bad thing. But in the same context, our proposal to extend START 3 for at least a year. Let everyone think. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Good luck.